When police officer Brian Zach responded to a call to check on a suspicious property, he wasn't prepared for how drastically his life would change. But on entering the scene, he encountered a sight that turned his stomach. He'd found a 2-year-old girl suffering from serious neglect. Soon after, Officer Zach made a critical decision that carried lifelong consequences for both himself and the child staring back at him. Officer Zach was working a night shift for the police department in Kingman, Arizona when the call came in. His orders at first were just to check on the status of the house. But when he arrived on the scene, the policeman quickly realized the stakes of the situation. After arriving at the house, Officer Zach found a 2-year-old girl named Kyla. The policeman's body cam captured how the toddler had bruises on her face and a shocking black eye. Criminal charges were later filed against the girl's mother and the mother's boyfriend, but Officer Zach knew he had to take drastic action right there and then. First things first, the police officer removed the young girl from the home. He took her back to the police station, where the pair waited for people from the Department of Child Safety, DCS, to arrive. Over the next 5 hours, though, Officer Zach and Kyla formed an incredible bond. The duo spent the next few hours eating snacks, coloring, and watching the Disney movie Wreck-It Ralph. It seemed that despite her troubled life, the little girl was still strong in spirit. But Officer Zach couldn't stop thinking about what would happen to her next. Because even though they just met, Officer Zach and Kyla clearly had something special. She held my hand and she was just this cute little thing, Zach recalled later to Good Morning America. But soon enough, the DCS arrived at the station. DCS officers then transported Kyla to the hospital so that her wounds could be attended to. While she was confirmed to be healthy, there was one question that remained. Where would Kyla go now that the only home that she had ever known was deemed unsafe? Unfortunately, the Child Protective Services were unable to locate any family members who could shelter Kyla. Yet after spending all that time with Kyla, Officer Zach couldn't get her out of his mind. He thought something just had to be done to help this vulnerable child. After he returned home, Officer Zach told his wife, Sierra, about the adorable little girl that he'd encountered. The father of 2 even told Sierra that he wished that Kyla could have stayed with his family, but there was nothing else he could do, was there. The next morning, Officer Zach phoned the DCS worker to check on Kyla, and that's when his life changed forever. The agent on the line wanted to know if the Zachs could act as a placement family for Kyla until a suitable alternative arrangement could be made. But while the policeman's first instinct was to take Kyla in, he had his own family to think about first. There were his wife's feelings to consider, and also those of his 2 biological children. How would 17-year-old daughter Rena and 15-year-old son Trevin react? It was a big decision, so everybody had to be on board from the get-go. Fortunately, the family was happy to help. Yet even with the blessing of all of the Zachs, the policeman couldn't just go and pick up the little girl. One major hurdle to overcome was whether Officer Zach's involvement would in any way affect the criminal case against Kyla's caregivers. So for the time being, all they could do was wait. There were only 5 days between Officer Zach's first encounter with Kyla and the DCS arriving at his home with the neglected girl, but any fears the policeman might have had about whether Kyla would be comfortable with his family were quickly dispelled. As soon as he greeted her at the car, the girl was smiling at him. The little girl even reached out to Officer Zach. She then held onto the policeman's hand as he led her inside. Yet while the Zach family was thrilled to welcome Kyla into their home, they knew that her adjustment wouldn't be easy, even if it was just short-term. We were obviously attached. It was going to devastate us if she went back, Officer Zach later told People. We only bought a certain amount of clothes and just kind of play each week as we could, but that wasn't the only challenge. The toddler had a very limited vocabulary. In fact, she only knew 3 words and, according to the policeman, otherwise grunted like a caveman. But on her second day with the family, Kyla would say another word that would leave the Zachs in utter shock. In the most unexpected of twists, Kyla began calling Sierra Mom and Mommy. It took a little longer for Officer Zach to be upgraded to dad status, though. I was guide for a week or 2, and then when she started preschool, she learned who the dad was. He told Good Morning America. Still, the end of their story wasn't set in stone. While Kyla fit in with the Zacks almost immediately, she was still dealing with challenges that no small child should have to face. And there was always the possibility that she would one day have to leave the Zacks for a more permanent home. But even with her difficulties, the Zach family knew they wanted Kyla to stick around. And Kyla quickly became an integral member of the family. The group even went on exciting excursions, such as a trip to Disneyland and a family vacation to Hawaii. So with their love for Kyla growing each day, the Zacks realized that fostering Kyla temporarily was no longer an option. 30 months after Kyla had first set foot in the Zacks' home, she was officially adopted by Officer Zach and Sierra. The best thing to come out of 2020 is the fact that we gained an official member of our family. That was my Christmas present, Officer Zach emotionally declared to Good Morning America. I love him so much, Kyla answered when asked about her feelings for Officer Zach. The policeman garnered a lot of attention for his touching act and was even praised as a hero.